Thank you to everyone for taking your seats. Thank you to everyone for coming. I am Lori Weintrob, Professor of History and Founding Director of the Wagner College Holocaust Center. Along with my colleague, Laura Morowitz, Professor of Art History and Senior Research and Programming Associate of our Holocaust Center, we are grateful to launch our symposium, Heroines of the Holocaust, Nurses and Doctors as Resistors in Genocide. Together, we seek new insights into the escalation of hate and violence and how it can be met with moral courage, empathy, and community building. I would like to introduce our Provost, Tarsha Stanley, to say a few words of welcome. Provost Stanley came to Wagner College 1 year ago after serving as chair of the English department at Spelman College and dean of the School of Humanities, Arts and Sciences at St. Catherine University. Thank you, Tarsha.
Good morning. I bring you greetings on behalf of President Angela Ramo and the Board of Trustees and all of our family here at Wagner College. As Provost of Wagner, a liberal arts institution in Staten Island, I welcome you today. I'm particularly proud that this international symposium draws together our students and faculty from the arts and humanities with our professional programs, including our doctorate in nursing practice. Our nursing program was established 80 years ago in the spring of 1943, after the U.S. entered World War II and wartime needs accelerated a demand for nurses. Most of our students participated in the Cadet Nursing Corps, and that dedication to the community remains part of our campus-wide mission. Our Evelyn L. Spiro School of Nursing was named for one of our earliest graduates from the class of 1949. It is exciting to see this program organized by our nursing faculty, Jane DeFazio, Edna Aurelis, and Dean Pat Tooker, experts in compassionate care and mental health, jointly working with the Arts and Humanities faculty, Lori Weintrob and Laura Morowitz. Women in healthcare, nurses, doctors, and other medical professionals offer invaluable support in times of war and genocide, as well as in our own times. And having them develop a strong moral compass is critical. Wagner College supports this effort to bring scholars and medical educators from across the globe to our campus to debate important issues for our times. Thank you for being a part of this dialogue.
Dr. Victor Avis, DDS, graduated from Duke University and the Georgetown University School of Medicine in 1985. Victor is a third-generation philanthropist, community activist, humanitarian, and innovator in the Staten Island community. He served as the first chair of our Wagner College High Society and currently serves as the chairman of the Board of Airway Revolution to create awareness and advocacy for an airway disorder, in addition to his many roles at the JCC of Staten Island. And I'd like to bring Victor up for some opening remarks.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here and to see what the Wagner College Holocaust Center, the Wagner College administration and faculty and the community has come around Wagner, and to bring events like this, which are international in its scope, but Wagner and local in its pride. Welcome to our distinguished scholars, guests, Wagner College administrators, Provost Stanley, professors and students, and thank you to Wagner College Professors Laura Morowitz and Lori Weintrob for imagining and organizing today's program. I think all of us in the medical field recall with utter horror when we first learned about issues around medicine and the Holocaust. They largely consisted of stories about euthanasia, cruel medical experiments, and the utter violation of any kind of medical ethical code. but there are not many medical practitioners today who are equally or even casually aware of the other side of this medicine and the Holocaust, the extraordinary acts of courage, sacrifice, and rescue enacted by nurses, doctors, and medical personnel throughout the entirety of the Holocaust. It is deeply meaningful for me to be attending this conference at Wagner College, dedicated to these brave heroes, and especially as the father of 3 daughters, that the focus is on women nurses and doctors. I'm also excited by this exchange of knowledge and ethics between professors and scholars of medical research and those working in the field of genocide studies. Our presenters today are deeply informed by both bodies of knowledge, and the roundtable following the presentation will offer a chance to see active medical providers and teachers in dialogue with historians and researchers. It is hard to imagine walking away from today without new questions that will penetrate deeply into how we see ourselves as those who offer healing, comfort, and sometimes life-saving care. As a doctor and the former chair of the High Society at Wagner College, I am proud to welcome these remarkable international scholars today who will illuminate the stories of ordinary but extraordinary medical resistors and rescuers whose acts of courage still have much to teach us as caregivers and as human beings.
We want to take a moment to thank the many people who made today possible. We are truly grateful for all our sponsors, starting with those close to home, the Wagner College High Society, which acts as an advisory board to the Wagner College Holocaust Center, the Kaufman Repage Lecture Series Fund, and the Evelyn L. Spiro School of Nursing. We are honored to be supported by many healthcare organizations, including the Richmond University Medical Center, RUMC, the EG Healthcare of Staten Island, and the Sigma Theta Tau International Honor Society of Nursing. We also thank the JCC of Staten Island and the Center for Medicine, Holocaust, and Genocide Studies at Cedars-Sinai. We are honored by the presence of all of our accomplished scholars from Israel, Poland, Rwanda, and beyond, and owe a special shout out to Dr. Hetty Wald for coming to our campus and inspiring us with her support.
From the moment we approached the faculty of the Evelyn Spiro School of Nursing, they have been our enthusiastic partners. Dr. Jane DeFazio was the first to respond and has been saying yes, yes, and yes ever since. Dr. Pat Tooker, dean of our nursing school, has been incredibly helpful, from connecting us to medical organizations on the island, raising funds, and assuring the wonderful nursing students here today. We also thank the faculty who have agreed to sit on the roundtable this afternoon. As with all of our endeavors, the chair of the High Society, Fern Zagor, has offered her tremendous support, and we are honored to have 2 other members of our High Society, Dr. Victor Avis, who you just met, and Dr. Ram Roth, from whom you will hear shortly. Dan Glassman has generously given up his day, as so often, to make sure our technology runs smoothly. Marilyn Zafert did an incredible job getting the word out through her press releases and marketing skills. Sharon Gwinta did a great job organizing the stay of our participants. And Linda Neville was very helpful with numerous arrangements on campus. And we thank the many staff members and employees who got everything ready for us today.
It is meaningful to consider the role of humanitarian resistance in genocide with historians, medical educators, practitioners, and our future doctors and nurses who are here today from the nursing school student body. This conference is the 3rd in our series, Heroines of the Holocaust, which has allowed us to explore the courage of women and the full spectrum of armed to spiritual resistance in many countries, from the Armenian genocide to the genocide of the Tutsi in Rwanda. At last year's symposium, we learned about several Armenian nurses and midwives who played essential roles in the rescuing of children and sometimes their parents, such as Elmes Santorian, who became a head nurse at a military hospital in Aleppo. She had survived typhus, which facilitated her work with refugees and military persons with that disease and the hiring of other deportees as medical assistants. Interestingly, Staten Island also hosted a hospital for typhus patients in World War II. And I'd like to thank our own Virginia Allen, who is here today to represent the Black Angels, African-American female nurses who were asked to come from the Southern United States like herself, who did work that white nurses were unwilling to do. On the role of medical personnel in the ghettos and camps, today's symposium builds on lessons we learned about Hadassah Rosensaft, a Polish-Jewish dentist trained in Paris. She had to go to Paris because of the anti-Semitism in medical schools in Poland. In 1943, Rosensaft was first forced to work alongside the notorious Joseph Mengele at Auschwitz-Birkenau. With scarce bandages or anesthesia, she attempted to heal abscesses and wounds, in her words, quote, inflicted by dogs, as well as from the whips of the SS guards who watched the women at work. Later in the war, her medical skills benefited hundreds of children in Bergen-Belsen. And in testimony from the Holocaust and all genocides, including the genocide against the Tutsi, we know that too many young women were beaten and raped cruelly, as well as losing siblings, parents, and family members. Yet they have managed through their own resilience and courage and with the help of others, including medical professionals, to overcome this trauma. I want to particularly acknowledge survivor of the Tutsi genocide, Console Nishimwa, who is here today, for her years of work empowering women by sharing her tragic experiences, including with students in the education and nursing and other departments at Wagner College. Today is an opportunity to listen and learn from experts on the courage of nurses and doctors in history and to remember. It is also an opportunity to build this into our practice as caretakers and nursing and medical professionals today and in all fields. The mission of the Wagner College Holocaust Center is to empower future generations in empathy, courage, and ethical decision-making in order to combat anti-Semitism, racism, and all forms of prejudice. We seek to elevate the experiences and words of those rescuers and resistors, and particularly women of valor, our heroines. We hope today's dialogue will deepen our understanding of these inspiring women. Thank you.
At the age of 53, Gertrude Truda Groag, a Jewish nurse from Moravia, was deported to Theresienstadt, where she would work for 2 years in the ghetto's Schloss Hospital. In the most unimaginable conditions of utter filth, starvation, and complete lack of medication and staff, Truda found the will to continue by believing that her nursing skills might save someone from the clutches of an anguished death. Quote, "We did whatever we could in our work. We had to invest a great deal of energy to save as many victims as we could from Hitler's hands. I called it Mein Kampf, my struggle, when I helped a person heal. I convinced myself that I'd saved this person, this soul, from the Nazis," end quote. For those of us here who do not work in the medical field, it is difficult to imagine the responsibility and weight of taking care of the sick, of being partially, sometimes wholly responsible for a person's life. To do so, even in the best of circumstances, seems overwhelming. But the heroines we will speak of today did so in the worst, the most harrowing, the most agonizing, the most physically and mentally difficult situations that human beings have ever faced. And yet they persisted, often sacrificing themselves in their determination to bring care, alleviation of suffering, and hope against all odds that their actions would mean something. Some of these nurses, doctors, and medical personnel were the age of you students here today. Some were well into their 70s, the age of your grandmothers. Some had a lifetime of experience, others none at all. It is the job, of course, of nurses and doctors to heal, to stem the tide of death. But how do you do so knowing you are only staving off the inevitable? That death will come, not by accident, but by design, to the healthy and the sick, to the newborn and the elderly, to the weak and to the powerful. Ruth Ehrman, a 19-year-old native of Prague, was deported to Theresienstadt, where she worked as a nurse. In her diary, her sister, Alyssa, recorded Ruth's empathy and her bravery. May 12, 1945. My sister is there. She cannot pull herself away. I understand that. The decision to leave the barracks behind, knowing that 250 living young people are gasping their last. Who could do that? And yet everyone knows she cannot help. And yet only recently have scholars of the Holocaust and of genocide begun to write about these more ordinary heroes, not those who picked up Molotov cocktails or blew up bridges, but those on the front line for weeks, for months, for years at a time. It is our honor today that many of the scholars whose scholarship has written these heroes back into history are with us today. In the talks of Miriam Ofer and Maria Cieselka, we will learn of some of the 400 Jewish women physicians, 15% of the total number of doctors who perished in the Holocaust, 160 from the Warsaw Ghetto alone. The scholars speaking today about the genocide against the Tutsi, Donatilla Mukamana and Sarah Brown, know not only from archives and diaries, but from listening directly to the voices of and caring for victims and caretakers. How do you heal when those left alive have been gang raped, tortured, their bodies violated, and their spirits destroyed? What were the agonizing predicaments, the choiceless choices, the ethical decisions nurses and doctors faced every day? Whom to protect, whom to heal, and yes, whom to sacrifice? How could they face such decisions? How could they act with integrity and empathy, even in the face of terror, indeed of annihilation? It is precisely these questions that our scholars Hedy Wald and Zvika Orr and Anat Romim raise today as they share with us the transformative power of teaching about the Holocaust and genocide to emerging nurses and doctors. What lessons can we learn and impart about empathy, about courage, about professional responsibility and human values? Such questions are more important than ever. For even as the last of the Holocaust survivors and rescuers leave us, we know that the killing fields and the horrors have not left. All around the world, medical professionals try to heal and to save lives in the face of unrelenting poverty, natural disaster, war, and destruction, and amidst the murderous rage of political violence, persecution, and genocide. May these stories remind us that even when these nurses and doctors could not save every human, their courage and empathy redeemed humankind.
I now call upon our first speaker, Miriam Ofer. Miriam is a senior lecturer at Western Galilee College, Akko, Israel, and teaches the history of medicine during the Holocaust in the Sackler Faculty of Medicine at Tel Aviv University. She's an expert researcher on Jewish medical activity during the Holocaust. The English edition of her book, White Coats in the Ghetto, Jewish Medicine in Poland During the Holocaust, was published by Yad Vashem in 2020. Dr. Ofer is head of a research team on medicine, morbidity, and childhood during and after the Holocaust, a multidisciplinary study of the Holocaust and its relevance in the 21st century. The research has been awarded a grant from the Ministry of Science and Technology. She's a member of various international academic committees, including the Lancet Commission on Medicine and the Holocaust, Historical Evidence, Implications for Today, and Teaching for Tomorrow, the Hadassah Brandeis Institute Academic Advisory Committee, and Ofer has published many studies on aspects of organization, science, and ethics as reflected in Jewish medical activity during the Holocaust. Thank you. Screen.
Yeah, okay, which one is like?
Miriam, is this one of yours? No, this is not.
I think that's go here. That is about right here.
Isn't it? Is it? Can you see that on Zoom?
It's screenshot. Yeah. We got a screenshot. Let me. Want to do it? Can you share again?
Yeah. Good. Miriam, just show me which to get.
This is like this.
Like this is
Okay,
good.
yes. We can do it in much.
I think you want to put it up so it's.
It's never mind. To me, it's enough. Only said to you. Never mind.
Oh, here, this is it, right, slideshow?
Yes, slideshow.
Okay, we got it. So did she know how to advance the slides?
Yeah, just 3 hours. Yep,
Okay, this is good. This is better for me.
I'll be right back.
So good morning and hello, everybody. And thank you, Professor Lori Weintrob and Professor Lara Morowitz from the Wagner College Holocaust Center for invitation to this important event. This year, we mark the 80th anniversary of the heroic Jewish uprising in the Warsaw Ghetto. Besides the armed resistance, other groups affected ghetto life and during the uprising. One of the most fascinating was the medical staff, including female nurses and doctors in key positions in the formation of the medical services in the ghetto. In many cases of genocide, we see the collapse of the medical system. Services provided depend on international outside help. The systematic killing stages take place quickly, and the victims have no time to set up emergency medical systems. The Holocaust of the Jews was a long 12 years process that began with the Nazis' rise to power, escalated bit by bit until the final solution, the systematic extermination of the Jews. In the ghettos, coerced community life took place under the harsh conditions. In Warsaw, the Jews independently, under impossible conditions, had to establish a medical system for about 500,000 ghetto Jews. They created a medical service that set public health challenges according to modern conceptions. Not only emergency medicine, but routine medical activities as well, academic study, in-service training, and research. Jewish female doctors and nurses made a central contribution to the ghetto medical services. In the Warsaw Ghetto, there were about 730 physicians, including about 160 women. About 350 nurses completed their studies at the Jewish nursing school between the wars, and about 80 studies there in the ghetto. Adam Chernyakov, head of the Judenrat, established a ghetto health department with 6 health centers. Professional committees were formed, such as the Health Council, a Society for War on Tuberculosis, and the Medical Service for Refugees. The Judenrat and Jewish Healthcare Organization TOS workers carried the main burden of running this system. Its main institutions included the Chista Jewish Hospital that was re-established in broken down buildings in the ghetto, and the Berson and Bauman Jewish Children's Hospital, clinics, laboratories, a first aid station, and pharmacies. A nursing school and an undergrad school of medicine operated in the ghetto at great risk for about 500 male and female students in the ghetto. TOS continued its activity from the interwar period in the ghetto, aiming to deal with social and preventive medicine. TOS operated its branches in many ghettos. An underground Jewish medical network operating under Nazi occupation. The Jewish female nurses and doctors' contribution is almost completely absent from the historical research. I will bring example of several women who reflect this phenomenon. Pediatrician Dr. Anna Braude-Heller, Director of Berson and Bauman Jewish Children's Hospital in the Warsaw Ghetto and head of the Ghetto Medical Committee. She studied in Switzerland and Berlin and specialized in Moscow. On returning to Poland, she worked at Berson and Bauman in Warsaw. After World War I, the Jewish communities in Poland were in terrible state. Tens of thousands of Jews were killed, creating many more orphans. Dr. Braude-Heller, member of the Socialist Bund, founded the Friends of Children Society and an infrastructure for medical, social, and educational help for mothers and children. The Berson and Bauman Jewish Children's Hospital was well known for its high standards. The children's situation in the ghetto became worse and means of treating them lessened. Anna Braude continued to lead a professional work routine and was dedicated to every sick child. Braude-Heller and other physicians risked their lives to conduct an underground study in the ghetto. Using scientific tools, they examined the effects of hunger to document the German crimes, to contribute to science, and to memorialize the victims. Anna Braude headed the research team on clinical aspects of hunger in children in the ghetto. Head of the Judenrat Health Department, Dr. Israel Melikovsky, wrote before his death, "A last few words to honor you, the Jewish doctors. What can I tell you, my beloved colleagues and companion in misery? Slavery, hunger, deportation, those death figures in our ghetto were also your legacy. But you, by your work, could give the henchman the answer, non omnis moriar. I shall not wholly die." Anna Braude-Heller refused opportunities to be saved and continued to provide a medical service during the uprising. She died in the bunker under the hospital. Nurse Bielitska Blum was director of the nursing school in the ghetto. The Jewish nursing school was established in Warsaw in 1923. It operated on the principles of the most modern nursing disciplines. The Germans were afraid the epidemics would spread, so allowed the nursing school to function. It was an island of sanity in hell, well organized with a high level of study. During the action, Bielitska and she saved several nurses from deportation. She smuggled some children out of the ghetto. After the action, in 1943, Bielitska hid on the Aryan side. She and their 2 children were saved. After the war, Bielitska ran a Jewish orphanage in Otwock in Poland for child Holocaust survivors. Later, she led the re-establishment of the Polish School of Nursing in Warsaw. She received the Florence Nightingale Medal. Dr. Zofia Sirken-Binstein was the head of the health department in the ghetto alongside Dr. Israel Melikovsky. Sirkin studied medicine in Kiev and worked as a doctor of internal medicine in Warsaw. She was one of the first directors of the Jewish Health Organization TOZ. Sirkin played an active role in JDC and the Jewish Medical Association and served as chair of the Organization of Jewish Women. In the ghetto, she was head of the anti-epidemics department. She committed suicide during the deportation to Treblinka. Archival documents reveal the daily difficulties. One nurse described, "I get to the ward and it is real hell. Children with measles, lying 2 or 3 to bed. I have no beds, no sheets, no blankets." Dr. Adina Schweiger performed euthanasia to spare the children and old people the torture. I received morphine and so bending over the beds and putting the final dose of medicine into the mouth of the infants. The ghetto historian Emanuel Ringelblum wrote, "When this tragic moment arrived and more than 1,000 patients were loaded onto the train cars, a small number of doctors and nurses went with them." The Jewish medical system in the ghettos was a continuation of the development of Polish Jewry. The Jews of Poland's secularization and modernization process accelerated, and the number of medical students increased. Paradoxically, anti-Semitism in Poland quickened this process. Many Jews had to study medicine outside Poland and brought back the most up-to-date approaches to the Jewish medical institutions. Also, the Jewish tradition that emphasized the saving of life as a supreme value influenced the medical staff in the ghetto. The contribution of female doctors and nurses to the medical system was decisive. After their long, exhausting, and dangerous work, most of them were exterminated. The individual loss was also a tremendous loss to the development of medicine in general and Jewish medicine in particular. Thank you very much.
Next talk is on Zoom. Thank you so much, Miriam. Okay. Our next speaker is going to be coming to us from Zoom, and I'm going to introduce her now, and she will share her PowerPoint. Maria Ciesielska is a historian of medicine and a practicing physician. She is also the chief consultant for the Medical Review Auschwitz Project and head of the historical section, Regional Medical Chamber in Warsaw. She has published articles related to the fate of physicians during World War II, with particular emphasis on medical issues related to the Nazi concentration camps, the Gestapo prisons, and the hospitals in the Warsaw Ghetto. Driven by a hunger to know more about the fate of her Jewish peers in Warsaw during the Holocaust, drove Dr. Ciesielska to carry out years of archival research to produce her latest book, Doctors of the Warsaw Ghetto, published by Academic Studies Press in 2022. It was awarded with the Maria and Łukasz Herszowicz Award, granted by the Jewish Historical Institute in Warsaw. And Maria, if I may ask you to share your slides with us. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me here and having me here to talk, whether it's on Zoom. It's an honor to talk for the college. Professor Miriam Offer presented the most important facts about the health service in the ghetto. I will speak about the last moments of its existence. In October 1940, I cannot change the slide. May I have your help to change the slide? Because it doesn't work.
Just click on the slide and then put arrow down.
Okay.
Okay.
In October 1940, Nazi authorities forced all Jews in Warsaw to relocate to the newly established, quote, Jewish residential district, end quote. According to my research, there were between 850 and 1,000 physicians in the Warsaw Ghetto. Approximately 26% of them were women. Almost all of them perished between 1940 and 1945 in the ghetto itself or in the extermination camps. Only several dozen Jewish doctors survived the war. Ghetto diaries and survivors' memoirs offer a moving vision of the lives of medical practitioners in the ghetto, while also describing their death. This presentation describes the professional and personal lives of three Jewish doctors, Zofia Zamenhof, Tola Mintz, and Halina Rothstein. Having the opportunity to escape from the ghetto, they decide to stay with their patients. The opinions on such decisions varied among the Jewish population. For many, these were acts of insanity, and yet the heroism of these people was touching. The so-called Great Liquidation Action of the Warsaw Ghetto started on July 22nd, 1942. In the first half of August 1942, patients and personnel of Czyste Jewish Hospital were ordered to move all patients into a building at Stawki Street next to the Umschlagplatz, an assembly point for Jews rounded up for deportation to the Treblinka death camp. Initially, the hospital staff were spared further deportations. The nurses and doctors used everything at their disposal to rescue people from the Umschlagplatz. At first, the nurses were able to bring water to those waiting for the death trains. As time went by, a small first aid station was established in a wooden cabin on the Umschlagplatz itself. Most patients treated at so-called first aid station were infants, abandoned in the square by their parents, who hoped they might miraculously survive. When the trains departed, the nurses collected the stranded children and gave them water. There was nothing else at their disposal. Babies tended to be quiet and calm, probably utterly exhausted. Up to 20 or even 30 of them could be accommodated in the cabin at a time, under the care of Nurse Frit, Dr. Danuta Strassman, and Dr. Halina Rothstein. But every time a transport left, those babies had to be given away. Sometimes the nurses managed to smuggle several of the children left behind out of the Umschlagplatz by pretending they were their own children. On September 12th, all patients and remaining hospital personnel boarded the boxcars. Among them was Dr. Halina Rothstein, who, despite being permitted to leave the Umschlagplatz, chose to accompany her patients. A few days earlier, her 4 children, Robert, aged 7, twins Helena and Jan, aged 6, and Staś, aged 2, were hit on the so-called Aryan side of the town. Dr. Adolf Polisiuk remembered that Dr. Rothstein, quote, went to a boxcar voluntarily to be with those needing her help. This is how she understood her duty. To many, such a gesture seemed abnormal, for the will to survive was so strong. Her behavior was very poignant in its heroism. End of quote. The same route was also followed by Dr. Zofia Zamenhof, a general practitioner from the Jewish hospital in Czyste. Dr. Zamenhof was the daughter of an ophthalmologist and creator of Esperanto language, Ludwig Zamenhof. Having completed her medical studies in Lausanne, Zofia returned to Warsaw, where she worked as a doctor at the internal medicine ward. In October 1939, she was arrested within the hospital premises and jailed along with her brother, Dr. Adam Zamenhof, who was the head of the hospital at the time. She stayed in jail until the spring of 1940. Her brother Adam was executed by a firing squad in Palmyra Forest. After being released from jail, she returned to work. In August 1942, during the liquidation of the hospital, Zofia was rushed on the Umschlagplatz. She didn't want to abandon her patients. She went along with them all the way to Treblinka death camp. Similar decision was made by Dr. Tola Mintz, a physician from Meden Sanatorium in Miedzeszyn near Warsaw. The sanatorium served as an orphanage for about 200 ghetto children. Dr. Mintz had studied in Vilnius to receive her medical diploma in 1940. She worked as a pediatrician and dentist. She lived in the sanatorium along with her son, Oskar. As long as until August 1942, the doctors and teachers managed to obtain food and drugs that ensured the residents could survive the coming weeks. Shortly before the liquidation of the ghetto, Bund activists offered Dr. Mintz a possibility to escape from the ghetto, which she refused. She also refused the help offered to her by the family of Dr. Trojanowski, who produced a fake ID and a hiding place for her. In the morning of August 20th, 1942, when the ghetto in Falenica was surrounded by Germans and all residents were rushed onto the square between the synagogue and railroad tracks, Dr. Mintz walked there along with her patients. The children, scared stiff, were arched into train wagons. Among them was Dr. Mintz's 9-year-old son, Oskar. On the same day, the transport arrived at their destination in Treblinka death camp. Noble doctors didn't abandon their patients, rabbis, their congregants, teachers, their students. Not every doctor or nurse, rabbi or teacher can be a hero, but when they are, we must remember their names, revere their deeds. As a summary, I would like to quote the words of an outstanding researcher of the Holocaust, Professor Barbara Engelking, a psychologist and historian, who said, quote, "However, heroism cannot be a norm of morality or a standard of conduct. It is always a free choice, never a moral coercion." Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to our speakers. Really powerful examples of moral courage. I'm going to call now Sarah Brown, also on Zoom, one of the first PhDs in comparative studies from Clark University's Strassler Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies. Brown is an education consultant, the former director of a Holocaust, genocide, and human rights education nonprofit, and currently serves as the regional director of the American Jewish Committee in San Diego. Brown began working in Rwanda in 2004, served as a project coordinator in the refugee camps in Tanzania, worked in refugee resettlement in Texas, researched conflict globalization in Israel, managed post-secondary education programming for the USC Shoah Foundation, and has designed and taught college courses on human rights, mass violence, and history. She's the author of Gender and the Genocide in Rwanda, Women as Perpetrators and Rescuers, and the co-editor of the Routledge Handbook on Religion, Mass Atrocity, and Genocide. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that very kind welcome. I am going to share my screen. If I can just get confirmation, is it up and running? Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
I'm looking for nods from the people. Okay, great. All right, so thank you to the Wagner College Holocaust Center and for all of your supporters, and also to everyone who's present today. It's really it's tremendous to be able to participate, albeit from Zoom, but like what a wonderful audience. I also want to send a very special muraho neza to my very dear friend, Consuelo Nishimwe. I wish I was there with you, but I am so pleased that you are a part of this initiative as well. So it is my task to get us up to speed on Rwanda, which is a little bit of a different topic. Same themes, but we're going to a different continent. So let me start with the basics very quickly. So Rwanda is located in Central Africa. It is a small landlocked country, approximately 10,000 square miles in size, which is about the size of the state of Maryland. It is comprised of three groups, Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa, that up until the pre-colonial days, before the arrival of the European colonizers, lived in relative peace side by side. Now, these three groups all spoke the same language, Kinyarwanda, and they shared similar cultural and religious practices. Intermarriage was common, and their designation as Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa, something that later became highly problematic and very rigid. This was more determined by wealth and stature at the time, based in part on cattle ownership, with a certain amount of fluidity as well. Now, in general, genocide does not occur in a vacuum, and to fully understand what occurred in 1994 in Rwanda, we would need to first understand Rwanda's origins, colonial history, episodes of violence and upheaval, both in the early independence period, the post-colonial period, and leading all the way up until 1994, but we don't have time for that today. So briefly, I'm going to cover some of the gendered aspects of Rwanda's history that will lead into this discussion of women healers who rescued during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. Now, when the colonists arrived in the late 1800s, they found a highly organized kingdom with a rich culture, thriving indigenous religious practices, and traditions that were carried forward by word of mouth, passed down from generation to generation through music, dance, poetry, and story recitation. This period is also marked by patriarchal rule. The men are largely in charge, though certain powers were extended to select women like the Queen Mother, who is featured in this photograph alongside the king, also known as the Mwami. Now, the arrival of colonialism really changes Rwanda, and not for the better. First German and later Belgian colonizers created havoc in Rwanda on the political and the social systems, favoring and manipulating the different groups in Rwanda to pit them against each other and keep control. At the same time the colonizers came, so too came the White Fathers, a European missionary order of Catholic priests who arrived in Rwanda and began trying to convert Rwandans to Catholicism. And this really impacts women in a number of ways, but we're going to, again, have a very focused analysis here. Court intrigue and some of the manipulations further sidelined women as the colonial powers worked to strip not just the Mwami, the king, of all power, but also women associated with the Mwami and the king, or king. And the Catholic Church upended the primary animist belief system in Rwanda, one in which men and women alike served as spiritual intermediaries and mediums, leaders in the community who both derived power and influence from their ability to intervene with spirits on behalf of believers, but also were able to often heal, having a knowledge of local plants, potions, and remedies. The white Christian religious authorities marginalized these indigenous practices as heretical, thereby undermining the authority of women in a number of capacities. They then went a step further, denying women a decisive role in the church and subjugating them to the religious authority of an exclusively male clergy. Now we're going to jump ahead to April 1994. The genocide I'll say this really quickly first. This is a highly gendered period of time in Rwanda's history. And I'm showing you two key images side by side. One is an identity card where they made the ethnic categorizations of Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa, something that was rigid and passed down from father to children, irrespective of the mother's ethnic identity. These were later used in 1994 to identify Tutsi and to mass murder them. And to the right, you see a cartoon drawing that highly sexualizes Tutsi women and names them as a specific nefarious threat working for the Tutsi cause and also seeking to sway the Belgian and international peacekeepers who were in Rwanda trying to monitor what was an attempt at peace in the early 1990s. Now, the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda began on April 6th with the assassination of then-President Juvenal Habyarimana. Almost immediately, the killing of Tutsi and moderate Hutu began. Radio announcers blamed Habyarimana's assassination on the Tutsi and on the Tutsi-led rebel front and broadcasted hate propaganda to incite genocide. Hutu Rwandan Armed Forces, this is the National Armed Forces, along with Interahamwe killing militias, set up roadblocks, distributed lists of influential Rwandans marked for murder, and so the genocide began. And it spread largely unchecked throughout the country for approximately 100 days. This is one of the fastest genocides in modern history. Hutu perpetrators slaughtered more than 900,000 men, women, and children. Estimates are as high as 1.2 million in just those 100 days. The victims were systematically hunted, tortured, raped, and murdered as part of an orchestrated genocide. At roadblocks around the country, the Interahamwe militia and their civilian supporters would check those ID cards, the ones I just showed in the slide before, and murder anyone suspected of being Tutsi. The perpetrators also used scorched earth tactics, practices of destroying not just the people, but also livestock and burning crops and infrastructure to further destroy Rwanda. The international community, unfortunately, completely failed Rwanda. Some, like France, provided cover for the Hutu extremists, and others, like the US, rejected pleas to intervene militarily. Belgium, the former colonial power, was the first to remove its peacekeepers. The genocide ended only after the Tutsi-led RPF rebels renewed their advance and took control of Rwanda in July of 1994. Interestingly, they celebrate the same Independence Day as we do here in the United States, July 4th. Rwandans then began a lengthy reconstruction and rehabilitation process that continues even to this day. And I do want to note that we are in the middle of the 100-day period in Rwanda, which will end on July 4th with Kwibohora. Now, it is my joy and honor to tell you a little bit about one woman who rescued, whose name is Sula Karuhimbi. Sula Karuhimbi was, sadly, an elderly and fiery Muslim woman of great renown in Rwanda. To some, she was a witch. To others, she was a healer. And to many after the genocide, she was a hero. Prior to the genocide, she was known in her area, in her hill, and it's often associated around hills. Rwanda is known as the land of 1,000 hills. That is not an exaggeration. She was known in her region for her relationship with Nyabingi, the traditional female spirit that accompanied her and afforded her protection and witch-like powers. In Rwanda, belief in monotheistic faiths such as Christianity and also Islam often did not mean that people always rejected their prior belief systems and practices. Sometimes they intertwined them. As a result, Nyabingi is still feared and respected in Rwanda and is often credited for inexplicable deaths and illnesses. People like Sula, who are believed to have a connection to Nyabingi, are feared and respected and often consulted as healers. Sula was horrified when the genocide began. She reminded her of the ethnic violence that had accompanied the independence period in Rwanda when she was a young woman. And she ignored the efforts of those who would have sensitized and mobilized her to participate in the genocide, or at the very least, choose to stand by and do nothing. Instead, she took immediate action. She began to gather people to her compound and to hide to them. Sula was confident that Nyabingi would protect her and leverage the community's perception of her power to rescue dozens of Tutsis. She went further, mixing traditional protective potions to protect her charges and smearing it on them, tying the younger girls to her kitenge, her cloth. that she kept wrapped around her waist in order to keep them close and protect them as they fetched water. She even went so far as directly threatening the Interahamwe killing militias gathered outside of her compound with fire and animal attacks should they enter her compound. She said, I would tell them that Nyabingi would eat them. I could try to shake things and call the spirit. I would get up and start knocking things to scare them, and they would run. Now, the killers were not initially cowed by her, but they quickly learned to fear her and to seek her out for medical treatment. They would not approach her compound and instead erected a roadblock outside of her home in the hopes of capturing the people hiding in her compound or other Tutsis who might have fled to her for safety. Undeterred, Sula went out and set fire to that roadblock, and she would charge at them, whistling and making noises, shaking her bracelets whenever she approached. She said, I used to say to them that if the Tutsis die, I will die also, but I will make sure that the Nyabingi would eat all of them as well. The military and accompanying Interahamwe killing militias were at once terrified of her, but also in awe of her. And so there was this interesting push-pull tension where they feared her, but they also sought her out for treatment. Now, as a result of her status and her relationship with Nyabingi, she and her charges were left largely unmolested. But towards the end of the genocide, her authority was challenged. Men arrived, and they demanded she hand over a young Tutsi girl in her care. The girl offered to go so that Sula would not be killed, and Sula argued with her. She said, let me first pray. And she explained what happened next. I brought out my mat, and I prayed, and I said, God be near me and rescue me. In an effort to save the girl, she turned to prayer and explained that though the girl left the house and went with the men just before she was violated by them, the rebels arrived and they began shooting, and her assailants were distracted by the gunfire and fled. The girl escaped. Sula saved dozens of people in her compound, relying on her wit, her fierce bravery, her status in the community as a witch doctor, and her abilities as a healer. There is a belief in Judaism that one who saves one life saves the entire world. Sula saved dozens of worlds. And when she passed in 2019, the entire country mourned her loss. Sula illustrates a powerful lesson for all of us. When we study instances of genocide in our history, our pages are filled with the stories of perpetrators who serve as cautionary tales for the youth of what not to become. But women rescuers like Sula provide us with positive examples, people whom we should and could and should become. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that inspiring talk.
Can you stop screen sharing? If she has to do that.
Yeah, Sarah, if you could just stop screen sharing. Thank you. Thank you again. Donatilla Mukamana, Associate Professor of Nursing, is a mental health nurse trained in Rwanda, Switzerland, and South Africa, where she obtained her PhD in mental health nursing from the University of KwaZulu-Natal in 2014, writing her dissertation on the topic of management of the long-term psychological effects of rape among women survivors of the 1994 genocide in Rwanda, a grounded theory approach. Thereafter, she became the inaugural dean of the School of Nursing and Midwifery at the University of Rwanda. Currently, she is an associate professor, serving as an educator, clinician, and researcher. Her focus of research is mental health, education, and sexual violence against women, with publications in the fields of women's health and HIV, midwifery, and nursing education. Her article addressing the topic of genocidal rape was awarded Best Article of 2009 from the International Journal of Nursing Scholarship.
Yes, it's the first one. Yes. No, this one. No.
Let me go to this one.
Let me just do a screen share. So that-
Yeah.
It's just like.
Yeah. It's okay. Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. It's okay. No, I gotta do that. Right now.
Mm.
It's just- Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Laura and Rory, for inviting me, and thank you for, yeah, it's okay. Everyone who is here. There is some similarities with the previous presenter. I will be talking briefly about the roots of the genocide, consequences of genocide, and what mental health nurses and other nurses in Rwanda are addressing those consequences. As you have seen, Rwanda is in Africa. It is a beautiful country with lakes and mountains, many hills. What I have to say is that Rwanda has been divided between European and Rwanda was part of the Belgian, the Germany, and after the Belgian. As Sarah said, in Rwanda, before the colonization, we were living together. But when the colonizer came, we were divided. What were social classes become then race and ethnic groups. As you may see on the picture, the Europeans were taking measure of noise and nose and eyes. And based on those physical characteristics, they were determining who is Hutu and Tutsi. While all of us were we were same people. And the Germany established that division, and the Belgium confirmed that division, documenting that using the ID card. And unfortunately, those cards who were provided to every Rwandan in 1936 was used in 1994 during the genocide against Tutsi to identify who was Tutsi, Hutu, and Tutsi. Yeah, sorry. And after the colonization, then it became the poor political leadership. During the colonization, the Europeans, when they come, they identify Tutsi, saying they are more smart, they have European look, they take them to school, then they can work together to undermine the Hutu. In the year 1950, the king, Rudahigwa, changed his mind and saying, all of us, we are Rwandan, we have to be equal. But the European was against that decision of the king. And they start supporting the Hutu against the Tutsi. And it is where in the 50s, as you may see on the screen, the Hutu took the power from the Tutsi and start the killing. And in different period, as it was said mainly in the social media, that the genocide was due to the crash of the airplane from the president of Rwanda. That was really wrong. As you can see, in different periods, Tutsi were killed, not for what they have done, but for what they were. They were killed during the revolution, when the Hutu seized power,
and those fly in different neighboring countries. And when we have the independence with the first president, once again, Tutsi were killed. And in 1973, there was a coup for President Habyarimana taking power from Kayibanda, and the Tutsi once again were killed. And in 1999, those Tutsi who fled the country in 1909, when they tried to come back to Rwanda through a liberation war, those Tutsi who were in Rwanda were once again killed, and starting from the baby to the old one. And those are why I'm showing this machete is to show you how this genocide against Tutsi was a genocide of proximity. People were killed with the tool that we are using in our garden, and it was not the killed by the stranger. Hutu who were extremists, they're killing the Tutsi who were the neighbor. And this is after the genocide. This lady is a symbol of a rape survivor having a baby, a child on his back. Why I choose this picture? Because rape have been used as a weapon of genocide to kill women. Some women were raped to death, and others were raped purposely by men having HIV/AIDS. Then this was a slow death, making sure if they didn't die from that rape, they will die slowly, because at that time, there was no treatment for HIV. And you can see a long queue of people who are in pink. These are those who were in jail because they committed genocide against the Tutsi. That is how the genocide that happened in Rwanda in 1994 is terrible. We are still living together with those who committed the genocide. Survivors are still living together with the perpetrators. And this is happening, if I may say, in harmony due to the strong leadership that went that all of us will become Rwanda. And what I may say now, in Rwanda currently, we don't have no longer ID card. There is no longer Hutu, Tutsi, or Twa. All of us, we are Rwandan. And why this is very important? Those kids who were abandoned by their parent, maybe Hutu when they were leaving the country. And they also those little Tutsi who survived during the genocide when their mom or dad died. All of those who are about 30 years, they don't know the origin. Therefore, it is very important that they know that they are first of all, Rwandan. And as a mental health nurse, to take care of our population, we are doing research to base our care to evidence. And unfortunately, we have an important rate of depression and PTSD. We have women who have been infected. You can see the rate are very high. And we have also those women who were having panic attack, mainly the widow, and also the PTSD and depression for orphan and the widow is very, very high. but I gonna insist on the prevalence of mental disorder. There was a survey on the national scale who had been conducted by the Ministry of Health, specifically the component in charge of mental health in Rwanda. And you may see those who are non-genocide survivor, they were having major depression, 12%, while for those who survived the genocide, it was 30%. And panic disorder, non-survivor, 81%. While for the genocide survivor, it was 26%. And for PTSD, for non-genocide survivor, they were 3.6%, while for those who survived the genocide, it is 27%. And this was due to the atrocity, to the terrible atmosphere where the genocide happened. And the research have shown that atrocity committed by humankind to humankind is highly having negative impact on the mental health of those who survived the atrocity. And here come the contribution of mental health nurses in Rwanda. Before the 1994 genocide against Tutsi, the nurses were educated only in secondary school. Sorry. And many of those nurses, well, some were killed, others left the country. And according to the Ministry of Health, only 3,000 nurses remained in the country. And in 1996, those who were fled the country, if you remember, in 1999, come back to Rwanda and start building the country of those who were in Rwanda. There was establishment of School of Nurses, and thereafter in 1999, the school, sorry, yeah, there is a mistake. It was 1998. The training, the education of mental health nurses started from there. And on that time, we'll be having only 12 nurses. And with the first graduate, we started training the second cohort. It was from those who graduating from the mental health department that we keep educating others. Currently, I can say now we have 500 mental health nurses who are divided in different, through the healthcare system. In Rwanda, we have what we call referral hospital, we have district hospital, and we have health centers, which is similar to primary health care. And those nurses, because the genocide against Tutsi in Rwanda have impacted in each sector of our life. The curriculum of nurses, general nurses, we have a component who are talking mainly about the research. I showed you how they should take care of those who committed the genocide. And also, as I told you, we are living with the perpetrators. They have to learn also how to take care of those perpetrators. Therefore, those mainly those nurses, some of them were educated outside the country, South Africa, in Canada, even here in the state. Those are designing the curriculum for our nurses. They are working in the clinical setting. They are also in the leadership position at the Ministry of Health, where they're designing policy that will help in the mental health treatment of people. We are doing also research to inform practice, and mainly we are working with community where we are using a collective approach. We are using mainly the this.
One more minute.
Oh, 1 more minute. I'm almost done. Where we are using community-based approach, where family are telling the story to their children, then it was also a way of transmitting memories and resilience, not only traumatic memories. We have mental health nurses who are working also in the NGO. This is my last word. Rwanda mental health nurses deliver a daily battle against the suffering caused by the genocide against the Tutsi, being the ear witness of the lasting effect of genocide, make them the frontline fighter of the genocide ideology. Never again is their motto. Thank you.
Thank you for that very sensitive presentation, reminding us of the importance of testimony, of sharing the survivor stories and the ways in which nurses play a role in that. I'm now going to introduce our next two presenters who are presenting together, one in the room and one on Zoom. Zvika Orr is a senior lecturer in the Department of Nursing at the Jerusalem College of Technology. Since 2019, he has been a visiting scholar at Sermes 3 Research Institute in Paris. He has received his PhD in public policy from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and was a postdoctoral visiting scholar at UC Berkeley. He has published on nursing, education, human rights, civil society, organ trafficking, disabilities, and university community partnerships. His article, quote, Teaching the Holocaust in Nursing Schools, the Perspective of the Victims and Survivors, appeared in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health in 2021. Anat Roman is a senior lecturer in the Department of Nursing in the Jerusalem College of Technology and head of the master's degree program. She's a nurse practitioner in geriatrics and palliative care and holds a doctorate in nursing from Northeastern University. She studies the clinical aspects of quality of life in populations with severe chronic illness and end of life, as well as issues in clinical practice and nursing education. This spring, her article on, quote, knowledge and perceptions of Alzheimer's disease among geriatric nurses, geriatric nurse practitioners, and nursing students working in varied healthcare settings appeared in the journal Population Medicine. Thank you to you both.
We're doing the slide. Yeah. The slide here, which one's yours? This one. Yeah. Right? Yeah. That's the one. Yeah, I'm just moving over there. It's okay. Yeah, I'll present it. I'll do that. Yeah, maybe this is the bottom. Yeah, what about it? You're right there.
Okay, thank you so much, Lori and Laura. It's a great honor to be here today. Okay. Great. So, Okay. Nazi Germany is a low point in the history of nursing, as many nurses actively participated in programs of compulsory sterilization and annihilation conducted by the Nazis. Despite the importance of this era for understanding processes that affect present and future nursing, Holocaust and genocide studies are not part of the curriculum in most nursing school programs. To date, this topic is taught in more medical schools than nursing schools as an elective course, and usually in undergraduate rather than graduate programs. We will present the Holocaust and genocide curriculum at the Jerusalem College of Technology and its impact on graduate nursing students. Since 2019, the Holocaust and genocide studies are mandatory for all first-year graduate students. The curriculum has 3 elements: an academic course, a study day at Yad Vashem, and a study day at the Ghetto Fighters House Museum. The course includes lectures, discussions, film analysis, survivor testimonies, interactive peer learning, concept analysis, and student presentations. Lecturers include nurses, physicians, historians, social scientists, and a lawyer. Some of them, such as Dr. Miyam Ofer, are here with us today, and we are grateful for their contribution. To date, 125 students have participated in the full program. The curriculum illuminated 4 main aspects of the Holocaust and genocide. First, the nurses learned how German physicians and nurses actively engaged in the Nazi racial health policies that started with the mass sterilization of people and ended with the murder of millions of people. Second, the students analyzed questions of social denial of contemporary horrors, the indifference of bystanders, and the denial of past atrocities, such as the Armenian genocide. We also elaborated on other genocides, such as the ones in Rwanda, Bosnia, and Darfur, and the reaction or lack of reaction to them. Third, the nurses learned about the experience of dedicated Jewish physicians and nurses during the Holocaust, who worked under subhuman conditions to provide healthcare, maintain sanitation, and contain epidemics. The course also examined the role of non-Jewish health providers, such as prisoner doctors, who offered assistance in the camps. The students learned about leadership in times of crisis, focusing primarily on women leaders. Fourth, the curriculum included the perspective of Holocaust survivors. The course explained the types of physical and mental morbidity experienced during the Holocaust and those which currently characterize Holocaust survivors. The program emphasized the role of nurses as critically reflective practitioners. We encouraged the students to be involved in both reflection in action and reflection on action. Students' texts were coded and analyzed inductively using qualitative content analysis. The findings suggest that Holocaust and genocide studies had a profound impact on the student nurses. The students' reflective writing revealed the following main themes. The students tried to comprehend the process that led the German nurses to become part of systematic annihilation. Many students gained a profound understanding of the moral and social responsibilities and the duty to take a proactive role against evil. Noah wrote, "We are at risk of becoming less sensitive. This is something I want to be aware of in my daily work, to keep from becoming indifferent, or worse yet, accepting and tolerating inhumane and unacceptable acts." Yeah. Students spoke of the importance of nurses advocating for the patients. The students also noted the extreme power associated with medicine and its devastating potential if abused. The nurses critically examined both the personal practices and ethics and those associated with the nursing profession. For example, they inquired whether concepts such as eugenics exist in today's health systems. Alma gave the example of, quote, the extensive number of prenatal tests that Israeli women take compared to women throughout the world. Does such extreme testing lead to a greater number of abortions of fetuses that are at risk of having a defect or an illness? Studying this area in history led Kathy to reconsider issues of structural racism. She described phenomena that bothered her in her daily work, such as preferential treatment based on ethnic background or social status. Many students thought that current attitudes toward people with disabilities. They discussed it with their colleagues and found that a large portion holds stigma. Some colleagues even said that they would consider it legitimate to sterilize people with disabilities. Students were deeply bothered by the indifference of the bystanders surrounding the ghettos and concentration camps. They were equally disturbed by the realization that indifference characterizes our society and that they themselves are indifferent to contemporary humanitarian disasters, wars, and structural violence. Many gave the examples of Ukraine and Syria. Malka criticized the prevailing discourse in Israel that often tolerates the social suffering of other peoples. Quote, you might expect that the people that have suffered anti-Semitism be more sensitive to the suffering of other peoples. Sadly, however, this is not always the case. The students learned about the moral and professional dilemmas of Jewish physicians and nurses. They also explored their own professional practices and ethical dilemmas. After learning about the case of Dr. Adina Blady-Schweiger, whom Miriam spoke about, Talia openly shared the following. There were several times when I was caring for a child in a fatal condition and at the same time was praying the death would come and thus end the child's suffering. On those occasions, I would ask myself, what kind of a nurse am I who prays for a patient to die? The students noted that the Holocaust studies helped them to gain a better understanding of the patients who are Holocaust survivors and how to appropriately treat them. Students also noted that the course led them to a better understanding of the difficulties experienced by patients who are themselves admitted to the hospital and stripped of their former identity and personality. Oftentimes, the lessons learned from Holocaust and genocide studies pertain to medical ethics. We propose, however, that these studies can also facilitate a deeper socialization of nurses as critical intellectuals in the way Edward Said conceptualized it. Holocaust and genocide studies encourage nurses to unearth issues in people that are routinely silenced or denied, confront dogma, question issues considered unquestionable, and engage in social advocacy for patients exposed to structural violence. Teaching the Holocaust and genocide in nursing schools is highly effective in equipping nurses with a moral compass to navigate moral challenges, building an ethic of responsibility and social involvement. Holocaust and genocide studies can be a novel component in the current trend of incorporating issues of structural racism, systemic inequity, discrimination, and implicit bias in the nursing curriculum. These studies add a much-needed historical contextualization that is often missing in the current efforts to increase the social responsibility in nursing. It should be noted that the program used a personalized pedagogical approach that contributed to experiential learning, but was also emotionally challenging for the participants. We recommend including Holocaust and genocide studies as a requisite component in undergraduate and graduate nursing programs worldwide. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'm sure that there are many people in the room who are really stimulated by the ideas that you just presented us with. Can we just stop the split screen? Thank you. And now we have our final speaker of presentations before we turn to our roundtable. Hetty Wald, PhD, is clinical professor of family medicine at the Albert Medical School of Brown faculty at the Albert Medical School of Brown University, Harvard Medical School Pediatrics Leadership Program, and one of the commissioners of the Lancet Commission on Medicine and the Holocaust. Professor Wald has been recognized with Dean's Excellent in Teaching Awards, served as a Fulbright Scholar in Medical Education for Ben-Gurion University of Health Sciences in Israel, and as a Gold Humanism Foundation Harvard Macy Scholar. Professor Wald has been a visiting professor and academic consultant at over 100 healthcare professional schools and healthcare organizations worldwide, presenting on reflective writing-enhanced reflection, supporting professional identity formation, promoting resilience, well-being, and flourishing in healthcare professions, education, and practice, and Holocaust and medicine in health professions education. Her creative writings, reviews, and poetry have appeared in literary and medical journals, as well as medical education blogs. Her work has been cited in the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, LA Times, Chicago Tribune, and the Jerusalem Post. Hetty, under H. Hetty. I'm using this right here, right?
There you go.
Okay.
Okay, try it.
How we doing? How we doing?
Okay.
Good. Okay. So there's a term in Hebrew, acharon, acharon Haviv. The last is the dearest. We will try to move this along. Thank you so much for your attention, rapt attention, seeing the nursing students here. It's just so gratifying. I can't get over it. Just really, really quick on my title slide, you'll notice I have a paragraph under my credentials. I call it the hidden CV. We bring our stories to all the work we do. We humanize the work in that way. So this is how I start my presentations. Thank you so much to everyone here, the nursing school. You work so hard to do good in this world. I just can't thank you enough. So within these three themes of reflection, relationship, and resilience that emerged on the concept of professional identity formation, or what we call PIF, P-I-F, I wrote a commentary on this for the PIF theme issue of the Medical Education Journal, Academic Medicine, several years ago. I discussed resilience as not only emotional, but also moral, and it affects the well-being in the health professions. PIF is distinct from professionalism. It's not just a checklist of behaviors. I've published with Professors Rice and Check in Stat News that, quote, when the doctor in the white coat or the nurse in the blue scrubs approaches you in your hospital bed, it is not enough that they bring a stethoscope, technical skills, and knowledge. They must bring humanity, moral character, and agency, close quote. And at around that time, I also published on reflection on being, as well as reflection on action. Professor Rice and I published in that issue on scaffolding or supporting PIF, professional identity formation, with the history of the legacy of medicine during the Holocaust. It becomes part of our DNA. And why is that? PIF has been defined by Cruz et al. In this way. It's how we represent ourselves in stages over time. The characteristics, values, and norms of the medical profession are internalized, resulting in us thinking and acting and feeling like a physician. We establish core values, moral principles, self-awareness. And in the nursing literature recently, this has been taken up. The core domains. It doesn't just happen. We have to work on this. Values, ethics, knowledge, including the critical reflection. I love this term, leadership and professional comportment. So it's so wonderful to see that this is happening in both the medical and nursing literatures. I have written that it's active construction of PIF on a lifelong basis. It's negotiation. It's an active dynamic process for choices being made, and it's transformative. We foster awareness of professional and personal experiences shaping the professional identity, and that dynamic identity informs our actions and work. So we need a healthy, morally resilient professional identity to build upon. Educators are interested. How do we get this to be explicit in the curriculum? It's not only having the identity, but what do we do with it? In general, no moral compass app. This is a poster that was on a university. It takes work and ethical vigilance. McDermott and colleagues wrote in the Journal of General Internal Medicine about developing a professional identity as a change agent. We have to grapple with the lived reality of medicine, including grappling with the history of medicine and nursing. I became more involved in this work when I was invited to develop reflective writing for a study trip to Auschwitz with medical and psychology students of the Witten-Herdecke Faculty of Health Germany. And it was a transformative experience for me, and we believe for them as well, based on our work in qualitative analysis of their reflective writings. I brought and bring lenses of medical educator, clinical psychologist, and daughter of an Auschwitz survivor, Moses Voloski, whose entire family was murdered in the Holocaust. I have seen up close how powerful this personal narrative is for transformative learning in the work, its impact on learners at all stages of the professional life cycle. These are photos that I use in my teaching and presenting, including where he slaved in Auschwitz-Birkenau in what was called Canada and almost died numerous times. I was so moved. I was just in Israel and Nahariya at a wonderful conference that Dr. Miriam Orfer helped to convene when someone came up to me at the end of my talk and told me that that man standing on the upper left is his father. Moving from theory to practice, how can we design effective education and assess impact? I emphasize assessing impact across the professional life cycle of undergraduate, graduate, and continuing health professions education. This is a goal of the Lancet Commission on Medicine in the Holocaust. So happy to be serving on that with Drs. Miriam Orfer and Sari Siegel. Established in 2021, how do we determine if we achieve a stated objective of promoting ethical conduct, compassionate identity formation, and moral development? Students wonder about this, and they wonder about sustaining their moral compass. We need inclusion of exemplars of moral courage and resistance, as we're doing today in this conference, including Luba Bilaka-Bloom, heading up the nursing school in the Warsaw Ghetto under awful conditions, and the nurses who said no to exterminating disabled patients at Hadamar Euthanasia Center. There is emerging evidence of positive curriculum impact of learning about and reflecting on this history, including what we heard today from nursing professors Orr and Romem. I share now about our research outcomes in this domain as we consider morally resilient PIF in medical and nursing education. I developed a seminar entitled Holocaust and Medicine Education for Resilient Professional Identity Formation. A Holocaust survivor's daughter teaches German medical students at Auschwitz to address these curriculum needs. And I wove in the narratives of my Auschwitz survivor father and my work with the students and faculties, plus a post-seminar reflection colloquium where I used guided reflective writing and art interpretation to foster critical reflection on this history to support professional identity formation. I have integrated this teaching within diversity, equity, inclusion, cultural humility curricular, humanism in medicine curriculum, social justice, as well as ethics curricular in medical, nursing, and dental schools, residency programs, and medical and nursing continuing education programs in the US and the UK, England, and Ireland. The AACN Nursing Education Organization calls for integrating diversity, equity, inclusion, as well as professional identity in its curriculum standards. And President Biden's recently released United States National Strategy to Counter Anti-Semitism calls for inclusion of anti-Semitism in all diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Professor Cruz of Oakland University School of Nursing in Michigan and I recently published in the Nursing Education Journal, Nursing Education Perspectives, on positive outcomes of my seminar and reflection session there with their second-year students. Statistically significant increases in knowledge of this history and contemporary relevance, and salient themes extracted included knowledge of the role of nursing in the Holocaust, nurse as patient advocates, judicious obedience, adherence to ethics and values, art and reflective writing to process experience. We hope to study outcomes of our continuing nursing education for nurse professionals to contextualize this history within addressing implicit and explicit bias and healthcare inequities to cultivate a culture of equity. Striking pre-post survey results on increased knowledge through the seminar and reflection session at the Eastern Virginia Medical School, where Professor Mazurko and I presented at the American Medical Association Change MedEd Conference entitled Use of Medicine, Holocaust and Medicine Education as a Critical Component for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Culture, Humility Curriculum in Undergraduate Medical Education. Look at these striking percentages in the pre-post survey. Qualitative results, the students wrote about organizing their thoughts and feelings about the atrocities and reminding them of the impact a single individual can have on the world. How do we remain respectful of the hierarchy that exists in the profession while we also maintain the courage to speak out or question authority? Sometimes living the questions is just as important as trying to find the answers. I'm thankful to be faced with a poignant example of how far we can fall when we don't have our patient's personhood and humanity that center our practice. I don't think I'll ever be done processing this seminar. And Mayuri Karosha from that school sent me this gorgeous art piece that she did after my session there. This is so gratifying for an educator, saying that after some self-reflection, I wanted to paint something about my thoughts. It represents the importance of unity in medicine amongst all the complexities around you, represented by the colorful swirls around the hands. It's essential to always show compassion to one another. A milestone was co-developing a presentation on legacy of medicine during the Holocaust and its contemporary relevance with Professor Sabina Hildebrandt from Harvard Medical School. This was for the American Association of Medical Colleges, AAMC, encouraging survey results from an interprofessional audience. We had similar results from our 2023 presentation. You could see high percentages on the participants saying, this will make a difference in my work. It does make a difference on my attitudes, and I plan to follow up with some self-reflection and further readings. We were so gratified. Thank you so much for this powerful reinforcement for the basis of our professional identity and our shared commitments. I want you to be energized by the listing of these schools, nursing schools, medical schools, dental schools, where I've presented internationally on board with this work, the history of medicine and nursing in the Holocaust for professional identity formation. There's an ethics of memory, is what Margalit wrote. Hot off the press, you cannot make this stuff up. On Yom HaShoah, Holocaust Memorial Day, April 17th, our paper came out in the German Medical Education Journal about the reflective writing analyses of the German medical and psychology students on our Auschwitz study trip. Just amazing. There is a scholarship in using reflective writing for this work. Please take a look at this paper. We don't have time enough today, but I just want to highlight some of the themes where the students were speaking about reflecting on their personal and professional formation, about being a human being, not just being a nurse or doctor or a dentist. It's about being a human being, the contemporary relevance, and most importantly, the intention to use learning for moral courage and responsibility. Must stop and question our work. I want to initiate change. I've sharpened my senses for dehumanization. And a dream came true for me. Oakland Beaumont School of Medicine in Michigan. I told them I had a dream to take United States medical students on a study trip to Auschwitz. 19 fully funded medical students went with us last June, and we're taking 20 this July. Don't ever let anyone Don't let anyone take away your dream. Look at these people here at the Wagner College Holocaust Center. Don't let anyone take away your dream. It can happen. A new kind of professional, a moral apprenticeship, and how we learn to be the kind of person entitled to serve others. Indifference for me is the epitome of evil, is what Elie Wiesel said. And here I am at Canada in Birkenau, where my father slaved, with those beautiful students of the Oakland Beaumont Medical School, seeing the impact of personal narrative, having them read testimonials of victims, having them read about exemplars of moral courage. And we hope to study the longitudinal impact of this work and putting this into diversity, equity, inclusion competencies and disability education competencies. We can do this. We hope that all learners will take this with them as they craft their story of being and becoming a health professional, going from darkness to light. As Emily Dickinson wrote, there's a sliver of light where the meanings are. Thank you so much for your attention today.
Thank you so much, Hetty, and to all of our presenters. And now some of you nursing students might be asking, how should you process all this information? And so to help us, I call upon one of the early supporters of the Wagner College Holocaust Center and of Global Holocaust Education, Ram Roth. Ram is the son of Rachel Ruchama Roth, who was a survivor of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, Majdanek, and Auschwitz concentration camps. He is the grandson of Golda Rothstein, who was murdered in Treblinka. He's a clinical associate professor at Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai and an anesthesiologist at Mount Sinai Hospital in Queens. As a Staten Islander, he attended the Jewish Foundation School and did his medical residency at Staten Island University Hospital. He graduated from Yeshiva University and Mount Sinai School of Medicine. He is active in medical missions and medical education in low-resource countries. He's also an advocate for individuals with disabilities, notably supporting the exceptional Kisharit Kibbutz in the Western Galilee. He lives with his wife, Dr. Erin Gottlieb, in Manhattan, and they have 4 children. And thank you so much for trying to help us sum up some of the impacts of the speakers today.
Thank you, Lori. I want to thank the presenters, and I think I'm humbled to be any part of this at all. I am awed by the women who spoke here and also by the women that were represented who are not with us, the women who died in the Holocaust and women who died along the way in the other genocides. If you wonder why the world needs another Holocaust Center like the Wagner College Holocaust Center, it's because of a day like today, because the names of these people are not known. And sorry, it is so important. Every single story needs to be told because they are relevant. You are relevant, and you are part of the story because what you do, your PIF, as Dr. Wall just taught me that word. I never knew the word, but it exists in me, right? I am a doctor today, but I'm also the son of a survivor. And I'm also a doctor and a physician and someone who cares for people. And all of those things put together sort of create your PIF. I can't believe I'm crying. The closest that I have ever come to this, to anything as weighty as these moral decisions, is during the pandemic, during COVID, and you've all been somewhat impacted by it. But the impact is that some people turned around and say, I don't want to go in and take care of people, and others do. And it's a matter of whether you do or you choose not to. I'm an anesthesiologist. My unit turned into my recovery room turned into a ICU unit managed just by anesthesiologists, not by ICU specialists. And my wife is an OBGYN who continued. We both isolated away from our 4 children and continued to go in. And you look at each other and you say, do we want, do we need, are we able? And the answer really is, as the Talmudic sage Hillel is famous for saying, if not now, when? If I became a doctor and I don't stand up and do this, then what am I doing? I'm here to help you with the questions. See if there's anything else I want to say specifically. In our personal story, my mother was saved several times. You know, once by she was able to go to the barracks in Auschwitz where she was taken care of. She had typhoid fever. There's typhoid and typhus. You'll learn the difference. And that was crippling and could be the end of someone's life. And she was saved by someone who, not a woman who was in the hospital. She was either a nurse or a doctor. And she saved her by telling her to get the hell out. She told her that there was going to be a selection of anyone left in the hospital at a certain point, and that she was to get out if she wanted to survive. Her aunt was saved by someone, again in Auschwitz, when she was sick, who was able to give her some sort of medicine that was smuggled in. She doesn't know where. And you know, those stories exist, and for those reasons, people survive one moment and live to the next, and then they have to survive the next moment, and that's the whole history of the Holocaust. And it's the history of the people who survived the moment of being, you know, possibly violated in Rwanda, but then you still have to go on to the next move and continue. As nurses and doctors, the moral compass that I try to train, I didn't have the name PIF, but I like it, is that, you know, if a resident is with me and he drops a syringe on the floor and he picks it up, and I'm not going to say to him, you can't use that, it's dirty. What I'm going to say to him is that the patient in front of you, substitute your mother or your brother or your sister or your aunt or your child. If it's good enough for you, then it's good enough for them. You have to make that decision. That's your moral compass. And one final word about nurses. I'm about to ask you for questions, and I need 2 questions from the students. The one thing about nurses is that you should know that you are essential, more essential than the doctors, because you are there at the ground zero, at the patient level all the time. The doctors might be there for a moment and go and come back, but you are there. You are the eyes and ears of the doctors. I couldn't do my job without you, and I'm sure 100% of the medical field couldn't do their job without you. So I applaud you, and I applaud you for being here, and I wish you the best of luck. If you have any questions for any of our panelists, now's the time. Don't be shy. There's no stupid question. You know, the younger the kids are, who, when my mother used to give a Holocaust talk, the lower 3rd and 4th grades were bold enough to ask questions, and they were important and they relevant, whereas the older kids are afraid because they don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. This is a moment to ponder your professional PIF, I can't say that, your character, and it's also and your future as a part of the healthcare profession. You're not a student, are you? I'll repeat the question. Go ahead.
Doctors, nurses, pharmacists, if you don't agree with someone's lifestyle, you don't have to treat them. And mostly it's an abortion, but it could be anything. It could be you don't want to treat an HIV patient, you don't want to treat an immigrant. It could be anything.
Just to repeat the question, this is a very young retired nurse who's asking about how we feel, I guess the panel, about rules and laws that are created that dictate how you should behave related to someone's personal choices of lifestyle or abortion, non-abortion. And the honest answer and the simple answer is I'm horrified every day. And it's atrocious. And people need to speak up, and people need to help the problem is the extremism. It's either very far on one side or very far on the other side. We have to come together with, the question for these people are, if it was your daughter, would you forbid the abortion? If it is your son, would you not let him have a wedding because he's gay? I mean, if you don't make it personal, we cannot reach another person. Are you going to take over? Is there one more question, please, from a student? Someone in green. Yes. The question was if based on the previous answer, if one should go to those states or boycott those states. I think that by engaging, you're much better off than not engaging. I think that if it means visiting those states or moving into those states or making your voice heard from here, whatever you choose, do something, don't do nothing. We're talking about Holocaust and genocide and all that, and I am daily perturbed by the fact that there are hundreds of thousands of people in concentration camps today, and no one can or will do anything about it. At least I expect people to talk about it, and that's North Korea. Right? We hear about it, we see it. They're crazy, they're far off, but I don't see people engaging on the topic, and that disturbs me as well. Laura, you want to? Thank you.
I'm taking on. I'm going to do this. This.
You are. Okay.
This is going to go with the them.
Thank you so much for your heartfelt comments and those questions and those answers. We're going to be moving on to the roundtable portion of our program today. And Lori is going to introduce the moderator of our roundtable.
Okay, so now we're going to ask all the panelists together to think about the implications of the presentations this morning. And to help us with moderating this is Sari Siegel. After receiving her PhD in history from the University of Southern California, Sari Siegel was the 2018 to 2019 Jeffrey Hartman postdoctoral fellow at the Yale Fortunoff Video Archive for Holocaust Testimonies. She taught an elective course at the Yale School of Medicine. She held a 2-year postdoctoral fellowship in the program in the history of medicine at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where she subsequently joined the faculty as an assistant professor in the program in the history of medicine and became the founding director at the Center for Medicine, Holocaust and Genocide Studies. Currently a member of the Lancet Commission on Medicine and the Holocaust, she's also completing a book manuscript, Jewish Doctors in Nazi Camps, Conscription, Coercion, and Resistance During the Holocaust.
Hi, everyone. First, I'd like to thank Drs. Lori Weintrob and Laura Morowitz for inviting me to serve as moderator for today's Scholars Roundtable. And for those of you who can't see, it's a metaphorical roundtable because we've got a rectangular one here. I thank Wagner College Holocaust Center for hosting this special event, bringing scholars from across the world to share their important research, studying nurses and doctors as resistors in genocide. And I am pleased that the Center for Medicine, Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Cedars-Sinai could help support today's program. It's great to see so many people in the audience and tuning in via Zoom. So just to give you the lay of the land, our roundtable will feature 4 sets of questions directed at specific participants, and then hopefully some time for participants to engage with each other's responses and or address follow-up questions from me. And I've been notified that we do not have the same hard stop that you found in the program. So this is also an opportunity for everyone to ask questions of the panel already up here. You've got more to think about, and hopefully with what we're going to be discussing here, you'll have some questions. So going in the order of presentation, And I'm also going to skip the intros for the sake of time. Hopefully you've been here the whole way and you know who they are. And if you don't, check your program. All right, so first up, I'm going to ask Dr. Miriam Ofer. So you focused your presentation today on female health professionals, but your overall research on medicine and medical professionals in ghettos, specifically the Warsaw Ghetto, considers men as well. To what extent did gender play a role in shaping these individuals' experiences? Another way to think about it is, did focusing on women today inspire you to tell a different story or reach different conclusions compared to the conclusions you have reached more generally?
Harry, it's an excellent question. And I go on to ask both. Okay. I have written some of my thinking about this question. Did female and male nurse and doctors cope differently with the daily medical challenges in the ghetto? Did they write and document during and after the ghetto to the same extent and scope? Was the profile ideals and politics different? Was there gender discrimination among the medical staff? Were female medical staff more or less active and daring? Did many more medical women survive than men, or the opposite? Did female decide healthcare policy or just carry out the decisions? Did medical women take special initiatives not seen among men in the ghettos? Did more women than men perform euthanasia? The medical activity in the ghetto is such a broad subject and has many subfields. It is kind of microcosm of Jewish coping in the ghetto. I think that no overall comparative research has been conducted yet in the field of gender and medicine during the Holocaust. So it is difficult to generalize and to answer all these significant questions, but I will raise 3 points. In the archive, I found a very interesting protocol of a meeting in the ghettos, in the Children's Hospital, of nurses and doctors who had organized a strike in the ghetto. They were protesting against the Judenrat as they had not been paid for months. They worked hard, they were hungry and exhausted. During the meeting, male doctors stood up and said they would not take part in the strike because they were afraid of being accused of sabotage. The women answered that the men could afford not to strike because they were better paid than the women. It seems to me that this document speaks for itself. It is evidence of gender discrimination against women, even in the ghetto, of women's activism and initiative, and of those men's fear to support a just protest. This is 1 point. Between the 2 world wars, pioneering medical and nursing women fought against many obstacles, difficulties of the university, sexual harassment, and the gender exclusion, anti-Semitism, stereotyping, and threats that their achievements would prevent them from getting married. They are too much liberal, too much achievement. Despite all that, their percentage was high compared to their numbers in the general population. These women were goal-focused, which explains their impressive achievements in the ghetto, during the ghetto. 3, many of the women fought for freedom and rights. Ideologically, many of them were members of the Bund and other left-wing movement. They took on social responsibility for the community and were sensitive to the weak sector society. All these characteristics helped them to be leading doctors in the ghetto, to shape policy, run hospitals, conduct research, improvise solutions, plan rescues, take part in the uprising and sacrifice their lives to treat patients. I'm going to finish. When I wrote my book on medicine in the Warsaw Ghetto, I integrated the women's voices as an inspirable part of the men's. I did not write a separate chapter on women. When I look today at their activities throughout the gender lens, I reach fascinating insight about the strengths of women, the background to its development, and their leading unique contribution. Many of the women doctors and the nurses who survived rebuilt their lives and developed their professional careers. It is challenging and inspirational and gives hope. And that at last, I want to say the history of medicine during the Holocaust brings a spatial perspective to the Holocaust of the behavior of the intelligentsia. While the medical profession was at the terrible low, at the same time, there was a spiritual uplifting. The women and men who continued to help their patients and did not abandon them were proof of this. As a person with Parkinson's disease, I say here, women nurses and physicians, maybe you will be the ones to succeed strengthening in the medical profession with greater optimism, greater sensitivity, greater empowerment of patients, greater collaboration with colleagues, and with a holistic approach. Thank you very much.
Wow, you did amazing things with that question. Ladies. All right, so my next question is to Dr. Donatella Mukamana. Just generally, do I need this? Okay. Okay. Hello, Zoom people. So, Dr. Mukamana, the bulk of the discussion of and scholarship on the intersection of medicine and genocide is devoted to medicine and the Holocaust. And three of us here can attest to it. The Lancet put together a commission on medicine and the Holocaust, not medicine, Holocaust, and genocide. So your contribution, as well as that of Dr. Brown to today's program, demonstrate that there's much more to discuss and study. In your opinion, what can be gained through the inclusion of other genocides and mass atrocities in this discussion? And what might be learned in terms of similarities and differences? Lastly, to what extent, if any, are these particular gains related to the fact that the consideration of the genocide against the Tutsi concerns many perpetrators and survivors who are still alive?
Thank you for the question. Maybe I will start with the difference and the similarities. Why? It is unfortunate that those who planned the genocide against Tutsi, they have been inspired by the all.
You speak a little louder.
Yeah. Those planned the genocide against Tutsi in Rwanda, unfortunately, they have been inspired by the Holocaust, because the 8th stage that were used in identifying the Jewish people, putting the star, David star, there are many, many similarities. My colleague from Rwanda, she can testify when they were very, very young at primary school, they were identified as Tutsi, and they were called to stand up. It was a kind of humiliation. And what was happening in Rwanda, being an economic crisis, anything was wrong, it was reported that it was due to Tutsi. In few words, the Tutsi were killed for who they are, not for what they done. And this is quite similar with what happened during the Holocaust. And when you are saying inclusion, talking about genocide against Tutsi and the Holocaust and over genocide, this is very, very important because genocide or Holocaust, it is a crime against the humanity. It is go beyond the individual, and everyone in this room should leave this room asking himself or her question, being part of this conference where we'll be talking about genocide and Holocaust. What may I do different before I come to this conference? Why I'm saying this? In my presentation, I showed a map where the European divide Africa in different parts. One part for Rwanda went to Congo, which we call currently Republic Democratic of Congo. And some Tutsi, some Rwandan went to Congo. And currently what is happening? Now, those extremists who committed the genocide and went to Congo, now they are continuing killing those Tutsi who were in Congo when the Africa has been divided. It is go beyond the individual. It is a concern for everyone. Then everyone should react. Yeah. I think I have responded to your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that thought and feeling-provoking response. So the next set of questions is for two people here. Hopefully they can, no pressure, but get into conversation with each other a tiny bit. But I just want to put it out there, judging solely from the titles of your respective papers, and this is to Dr. Zvika Orr and Dr. Hedy Wald, it would appear that you're pursuing slightly different ends through your introduction of the history of medicine and the Holocaust into the classroom. Dr. Orr and Dr. Romem's title focuses on molding students into, quote, critical intellectuals, which they clarify in their abstract to be critical intellectuals in Edward Said's terms. That translates to inspiring students to engage with the world beyond the clinic, to speak truth to power in the public sphere. Dr. Wald draws upon this history to foster, quote, resilient professional identity formation, unquote, which seems to be primarily focused on situating students and practitioners within the clinical domain, getting them to focus on who they are as individuals in relation to their profession. Am I drawing a false distinction? In other words, are these processes of shaping critical intellectuals and catalyzing resilient professional identity formation actually two sides of the same coin? What's the relationship between the individual clinician and the environment, and how does the history of medicine and the Holocaust speak to both aims? Okay. You got to wait for the mic.
Thank you for allowing me to start. I think it's an intriguing question. And what I want to say is I think that this term of professional identity formation is one that's evolving. My study of this and my work on this is that I don't see this as just limited to the clinical domain. In medicine and nursing itself, we have research, we have public policy, we have administrators. So everywhere I go to discuss this, it's about a lifelong dynamic process of professional identity formation that's also actually personal. And our paper with the German medical students is talking about personal and professional identity formation. So that's how I would see it. To be a critical intellectual is to have critical reflection, not reflection as navel gazing, but critical reflection so that you're challenging assumptions, you're gaining multiple perspectives, you're looking at dilemma. Everyone needs to be doing this. So I do agree with Oren Omem's work, which I respect, and I've been reading all their papers. And I just want to say one more thing as it relates to Edward Said's aspect of going beyond the classroom. Well, yes, you are this human being and a holistic one in everything you do. Everywhere you go, being concerned about societal issues is going to impact us as health professionals and also our patients. So we do care about aspects of climate change, for example. One thing I do talk to my students about when I mentor them is to care passionately and do the work that you can do to this wonderful nursing student that was talking about this earlier. But at the same time, make sure you pass your tests. Okay, because really it's important to know your science and know the work because we depend on you when we're vulnerable in that hospital bed. So please make sure that you're doing that work in your profession. At the same time, you're developing your personal and professional identity formation with the values that are going to guide you throughout life. I hope that answers the question, and I'm going to give it over to my colleague.
Thank you for the question and for the comment. Yeah, until this morning, I wasn't sure that I'm ready to share a little story that I prepared. But when I see nursing students, I feel immediately at home. I apologize if it's a little controversial, but I think the discussion is important. So this story demonstrates the power of Holocaust and genocide studies in the long term. I wanted to share a response of one of our former students over 2 years after the completion of the course. One of the college administrators emailed all the female students just before Passover, the important Jewish holiday, and she just sent them Passover greetings. This greeting referred to the Passover ritual called Seder. Seder translates to order because this ritual has a specific order. And this administrator used this term to convey a message of personal empowerment to the female students. However, this message connected the personal aspect with the national aspect. It argued that just as extraordinary positive events have occurred for the people of Israel above the normal order, as she said, each student should ask for the fulfillment of the Had's wishes, even if these wishes are above order. The people of Israel and each and every student are above order. That's what she said, she told the students. The student I'm talking about has a strong sense of criticism towards any statement, even implied, about a hierarchy among peoples. She wrote to us, quote, "I'm writing to you out of appreciation and out of the belief that you know the value of equality. After all, we began our nurse practitioner studies with an important question, the question of equality, by learning about medicine during the Holocaust. Based on this, it seems to me that we should reevaluate whether such a message should be sent. Is there a difference between above order and below order? If I, as a Jew, am above order, maybe the German was right when they claimed that the Jews disrupt the world order. Or maybe those who are crazy or are gypsy or are homosexual are below order, with the hope of an equitable and moral order or seder, and with great gratitude always." So this student expresses the social and moral sensitivity she developed in the course, the need to be on guard, not only in the hospital, but also on campus and in public life in Israel. where this sensitivity is becoming increasingly necessary and uncommon. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, so the next question is for another pairing, Dr. Jane DeFazio and Dr. Edna Aurelis. And putting you on the spot, what did you learn today? And what are you going to do with all of this information? Because there's a lot. How are you going to distill it and share it with your students? And I'm wondering, do you already cover some of this material in your curriculum? And what are the challenges to adding instruction, if you're so inspired, on these topics or expanding instruction that's already in place? And in a magical world without those challenges, and by challenges, I mean potentially space within the curriculum, time, these finite things that you might have to maneuver. If you didn't have those, what would you want to incorporate? So good luck. Oh, I forgot to introduce them.
Yes, if you would please.
I'll start.
Just sorry, two of you because we haven't gotten your introduction.
So, right. This is my bad. Since Dr. Jane DeFazio previously had the mic, I'll start with her. She's a full-time assistant professor at Wagner College. After receiving her nursing diploma from the former St. Vincent's School of Nursing in 1985, she completed her BSN from the College of Staten Island in 1992, and then earned a master's degree in nursing education from good old Wagner College in 1997. She completed 30 credits of postmaster's education at St. John's University with a concentration in instructional leadership and education in 2008. For her dissertation, Teaching Compassionate Care, Nurse Educators' Perspectives, she received her PhD in nursing philosophy from Seton Hall University in 2018. Dr. DeFazio remains interested in and involved with research related to nursing education and compassionate healthcare.
So to answer your first question, I think we're doing it right here. I think we've already started with, introducing these important topics into nursing curriculum. And I'm very excited to be a part of this. And I want to thank my colleagues for inviting me. So my background and my research is on compassionate care, and you could say my moral compass was to learn, to gain a better understanding of how nursing faculty teach students to provide compassionate care. So we teach a lot of things in the classroom. We teach you tons of knowledge and skills, but it's a little bit more challenging to teach you about things like compassionate care and resiliency, which my colleague will talk about in a moment. So I sought to learn a little bit more about that. And in my practice as a nurse, I noticed that some nurses are more compassionate than others, and I wondered why. And I wondered if there was maybe something in their formal education that affected or cultivated how they practice and how they deliver compassionate care to their patients. And so my study findings were immense, and I learned so much from the faculty, the participants that I interviewed. But I think the 2 points that I'll drive home today are, the first was that in one of the findings that illuminated, there were themes, I'm a qualitative researcher, was that nursing students lack knowledge in history and knowing enough about other cultures, and that we need to do a better job at that. So I feel that today really provided that for all of you. And that is my hope, that we gave you a little bit, and there's so much more for all of us to learn, but that knowing more about others and their cultures and history will help you to be a more compassionate nurse. The second point that I would like to drive home is a big focus of my work is teaching strategies and how can we do this. And one of the ways we can teach about these kinds of concepts is through narrative pedagogy, and that's a very big word for just storytelling. And so I can look at my colleagues in the room and say, how many times have your students come to you and said, I remember that story you told me, and it made such an impact on me. I was taking care of a patient and this was happening. And I remember that story that you told me and how impactful it was. And so I know that I have nurse educators also here, undergraduates and some nurse educators, students, graduate students, how important storytelling is. And the stories that you heard today, I feel should take you out and make a difference in how you care for people, from no matter what their background is. Because I just feel it's just so important. And tell your stories to your patients. You know, we share, it's a mutual exchange. So those are my goals for you. I hope I answered the questions.
Thanks. And I'd also like to introduce Dr. Edna Arelis. She is also an alumna of Wagner College, where she earned her MSN in the Family Nurse Practitioner Program. And she received her DNP in Advanced Nursing Practice from Arizona State University, where she subsequently received her postdoctorate in psychiatric mental health. She is duly board certified as a family nurse practitioner and a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. Dr. Arelis has extensive experience in both primary care and psychiatric mental health. Among her peer-reviewed research articles is A Decade of Cirrhosis, the study for which she received the Maureen Robinson Faculty Fellowship in 2019-2020, and an anonymous grant for 2022-23. All right, take it away.
Thank you so much, everyone. And it's such an honor to be here to learn more about the Holocaust. I didn't know too much, but I know of the Holocaust. I know of the genocides that happened, but today's conference really opened my mind to read about ordinary people who were actually nurses and doctors who are making impact in life of everyday ordinary people also. And I always talk about how important it is to bring humanities and nursing. And today it actually confirmed the importance of how important it is to know about history and cultural sensitivity. Cultural sensitivity is something that I actually talk a lot in my class. I'm so happy that the students are here. Thank you for coming. And we're gonna talk about culture, when it comes to culture, how important it is to learn from each other. And so if I talk to Hetty and I said, oh, what is your ethnic background? Tell me a little bit. So we learn just like that. And by learning from Hetty, I can actually empathize with your story and I can treat you respectfully. What did I learn? What are the two things I learned? That was one of the questions. I learned about humanities and empathy. And I love the example you give when you talk to your residents and you say, if they drop something on the floor, instead of telling them, well, you cannot use it, you bring it back to them, self-reflect. Would you do the same for your mom or your brother? So that's self-reflection. I learned about that. And also learn how to treat everyone with respect and honesty and integrity. So these are the things that I think I'm gonna go home with, and on top of learning about genocides. How am I gonna include that in the curriculum? We have, structure, and in 15 weeks, we have to cover 40 chapters. I'm gonna find a way to talk about Holocaust and genocide, because these are important informations that all of us nurses and champion in the healthcare system, we need to teach and learn from each other. So definitely conference like this one. Thank you, my colleagues, Laurie and Laura, for inviting us, bringing the students, nursing students who will be our future providers in the future, healthcare providers who are there. So inviting them to conference like this one, and also including topics about genocides, bringing Dr. Hetty, who's gonna be coming in the fall. So these are things that we are doing to make sure that our curriculum is including Holocaust and genocide topic. Thank you.
So I'm gonna ask a couple follow-up questions and we can go down the line if you want. And in the meantime, for everyone here in the audience and at home or at your office on Zoom, please start thinking of questions you want to ask. You have this other chance right now. So think through, because we're going to call on you. So other question or questions. One, sort of to the psychological and psychiatric specialists here. I'm wondering, what is it about you people caring so much about this education? It seems like it comes up within the psychological realm more so than others. So could you speak to what draws you to this and what your skill set enables you to do with the history and bringing it to the classroom? So I guess that's Dr. Arelis, Dr. Wald, and Dr. Mukama.
So what draw us to?
What is it about your psychological or I guess psychological brain?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just want you to engage with that, because several of you, sort of at this point, the majority or half the people at this table have that background of really caring about, well, in some cases, psychiatric nursing. And I just want you to engage with that.
Okay, so let me just talk a little bit about my background. Oh, makes sense. One thing that because people ask me often, what leads you into mental health as a psychiatric provider or psychiatric clinician? And even me, I had to think, and I think what guides someone to help clients with mental health disorders or traumatic experience, I think one has to possibly also have some type of experience with traumas and become resilient. When you were tearing up earlier, it's not because you're weak, but it's because possibly while you were talking about all of these experiences, it reminds you of your father. And because of that, you become so empathetic towards other people. For me, it is because of past traumas that actually lead me to that field. And I feel like I'm making an impact to my students, my clients, and I do it with all my heart. So I think it has to be with past traumas that actually make me who I am today.
I think that's a very sensitive answer, and I'm thrilled that the students here have your expertise to draw on. I want to be brief and just say in general, thinking about this, what I find fascinating is there was a book many years back that was saying for some reason, children of Holocaust survivors, many of them became healing professionals, psychologists, psychiatrists, health professions. I'm not sure. There's something about the osmosis of living with that history and feeling the pain And I feel that that's true for me. I became a clinical psychologist, and now I'm in the Department of Family Medicine at the Brown Medical School. There's something about it. I'm not quite sure what that's all about. I also wanted to say that we hear a lot about vicarious trauma, but we don't hear a lot about vicarious resilience. And that's an area that I'd like to write more about, that in hearing about these incredible stories, and thank you so much for talking about narrative pedagogy, so important, but hearing these stories, we can live that vicariously, all of us, in our own moral courage and the way we stand up for what is right. We take these stories, we internalize them, and it's a moral uplifting. So I think in that work, it doesn't differentiate if we're in the psychology world, psychiatry world. We're all in the healthcare world, and there's a lot of psychiatric and psychological issues in every patient that's going to walk in your door. So I think we need to be well equipped in our reflective practice, our professional identity formation. And yes, I agree with you. History in the humanities informs this and needs to be included in all of our education.
Thank you. What I gonna say is really, really very personal. What happened in Rwanda during the genocide? Many people died, as I have said. And the fact that I was still there after the genocide, it is like it gives me a responsibility to do a difference in the lives of people. And also, when just after the genocide against Tutsi, in my clinical work, I met with a woman who was a victim of sexual violence, and she was dying from HIV. And he said, please, because at that time, women who, who were victim of sexual violence, they were somehow stigmatized. And she told me, go and tell the world that we are not complice of what happened to us. We were used as the object. Then is why I'm doing this job, talking about that. And also, I have been challenged as a human being, mainly taking care of survivor. It is painful. You are using empathy, but at least you can listen, you can hear their suffering. But when it comes to the perpetrators, because I told you, you are living together. Those who confess, they were released from the prison. They are our patient. We need to have such empathy, not being judgmental. When you have such client in front of you, you are not thinking he's a perpetrator, he's a survivor. You are saying that person is a human being who need care. And I was blessed to be here with many nurses. In Rwanda, 80% of health professionals are made by nurses. Is why in all curriculum of nurses, we are teaching them how to care about people who committed the genocide and those who survived the genocide. And that is about our value, mainly when you have empathy. Saying this person, if he was my friend, if he was my relative, what can I do? This helps you mentally to take care for everyone despite his background. But it requires a very personal growth And we have to make sure also that you have supervisors. Before we talk about having supervisors, many of mental health nurses were suffering from burnout because it is really, really to bear that kind of suffering. We are helping others and we come as well vulnerable is why we need others to support us. We are really working as a team. Thank you.
2 seconds. Hey, before question. 1 second, I'm sorry.
Continue. Okay. What I have to do? No.
I'm cutting it now and going to Q&A.
Just you can say if we want to just have a minute or two because we're supposed to close.
Second to last. She was holding. Yeah. Q&A? All right. I don't think there's any questions. Okay, so I've been informed that we can spend 5 minutes on Q&A. So for those of you tuning in via Zoom, please use the raise hand function and our tech guru over here will unmute you and you can ask your question. But in the meantime, any questions? We've got an amazing panel. Okay. So do we, yeah, I'll repeat it. Yes.
This is Elka Davis, who is the director of the Kingsborough Holocaust Center in Brooklyn.
Okay. So we've got the director of the Kingsborough Holocaust Center in Brooklyn. Nope. Yeah. There we go.
Hi. Fascinating. Thank you so much. Really, really. I know that words like enjoy is always really hard when we study Holocaust and other genocides, but I really thought that this was very interesting. I have a question for Donatella Mukamamana. Sarah Brown explained that Hutus were part of the leading classes, right? The ruling classes. So it also had to do with the socioeconomic standing to have that label, correct? It's like there was, some gray areas at first, but it also had to do with money as well as with ethnicity. Now that made me think about the fact that who are the people who can go and get a medical degree? It's often people with money. And I was just wondering, were there any discrepancies that there were more nurses and people in the medical profession, that they were more likely to be Hutu rather than Tutsi? And I was wondering if that complicates our research into the medical profession during the genocide. I hope that makes sense, but I was just wondering about that. If you can say a little bit about the ethnical background of both nurses and doctors during the genocide. Thank you.
Asking, I'm not sure if I got you well. You are asking why we'll be having many medical doctors?
Usually people who are who can fund a degree, whose parents can fund a medical degree, people from the higher classes. Now in Rwanda, to my understanding, there are Hutus in the ruling classes, therefore more money was in that class.
Yes.
Which would also mean that there's this discrepancy when it comes to the medical profession, that most would be, but it would be likely. I was wondering, that's my first question.
Yes.
Is it true that more Hutus were in the medical, or working in the medical profession, and how does that complicate our research, looking into the medical profession during the genocide?
As I say, it is, it was not only in medical profession. The way the education was organized in Rwanda, before the colonization, only Tutsi, the majority of them were going to school to be able to work with the colonizer. But when the king wanted to change the system to make the Rwandan equal, the colonizer then took the Hutu and put them on power. When we got independence, it is like the Tutsi have to pay back what happened under the colonization. Then, after the independence, there was what we call equilibrium. To be able to go to school. To give you an example, if we have one Tutsi going to the medical school, then we'll be having 5 to go to medical school. Tutsi were no longer allowed to go to the school. It reversed the system. Yeah, it's why and also for nurses, it was the similar. It's why in the school we'll be having more Hutus rather than Tutsi. And unfortunately, what happened during the genocide, those nurses, I'm sorry to say so, they were part of the killers. Yeah, they were part of the killers. Yeah, is what I can say. But I have to do research as well to identify those who were rescuers. But it was risky because those who were trying to protect the Tutsi, they were themselves killed. Yeah, that's.
One last question.
Manny.
Is it brief?
No, never it is brief. I'll be brief. So first of all, congratulations to a superb presentation. I'm proud to say I've been married, may she rest in peace, to my wife, who was a nurse, who exuded what you've presented here today. It is only after I received all the condolence cards that I found out a lot more about her and what she did in nursing as a nurse in Maimonides Medical Center. You spoke about individual and left a great legacy and a future promise for the students here. But in her book, Dr. Bernice Lerner wrote about the horrors of war. She spoke about how the impact of General Hughes and the 10th, the Second Armored Military Medical Unit came into Bergen-Belsen and set up the entire infrastructure for the survival of the remaining people, my mother included. My mother was taken to Sweden for recuperation. So I think it is incumbent upon all of us to go beyond the walls of the universities, to go into the military and to teach compassion and caring, and to look at the examples of General Hughes and the Second Armored Division of what he did actually to set up the infrastructure for the survival of the remaining women who were dying of typhus and typhoid. So I congratulate you.
Thank you. And we just have one. Consulate Nishwami would like to just say something, and then we'll be at the end of our program.
Oh, I can use the book.
Oh, he's filming you.
Oh, I didn't know. I want to thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Lori and Wagner College, for organizing this conference. Really, I was so moved by what everybody has told us today. So thank you. Thank you for bringing them. Really, it was so important for all of us to learn. I've learned a lot myself, and it's been an honor for me to be working with you and
And I'm so proud of the work you're doing here. And I just want to thank you so much for all you did today. It was so amazing. And thank you all for everything you did. And really, I was so moved. And thank you, Doctor. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And so just the last two speakers, Manny Sachs is a second generation Holocaust survivor, and Consolina Shimo, who I mentioned in my introduction, is somebody who has been coming to meet with Wagner College students for over 5 years now, whose story is permanently inscribed in the Holocaust Education and Action Gallery, which we have on our campus, which I encourage you all to visit. Her family photo from before the genocide. No longer all the members in that family survived. So our message in closing, we are so grateful to the nursing faculty and to Dean Pat Tooker, whose picture is on some of these magazines. If you want to learn more about her, it happens that there's a Holocaust Center article in the same issue. And since you're sitting right next to Efrat Lamondra, one of our sponsors, thank you so much for not only sponsoring it, but coming in person. Your being here really matters tremendously, because you are educating so many nurses and doctors and healthcare workers. It's just as well as seeing patients. And that's the message we want you to carry out here. We also have a doctor from Staten Island University Hospital, Dr. Gottesman, I believe. Yes, thank you so much for coming.
Yep. Okay, wait, we're not done yet. I also want, okay. Thanks. I also wanted to acknowledge that we have a Fulbright scholar with us today, Clara Nashevich. Am I saying it right? Nashkovska, who is working on Polish women survivors who came to the United States and went into the field of psychoanalysis and became psychoanalysts, which is very closely tied to some of the issues we've been talking about here with medicine, trauma, and the pull towards going into those careers. So we're so grateful for all of you. This would not have been the same event without you nursing students. It was really meaningful to look out and see all of you.
And just to say, for those who aren't aware, that a third of the students at Wagner College almost are nursing students, and almost half are in the health sciences. So the support of the faculty from the nursing program to be better integrate what we've been doing in the history departments, and this topic in many ways came organically from nursing students taking history classes and asking to write about heroic acts by nurses and doctors in the ghettos and in the concentration camps, and not just the horrific acts of nurses and doctors as perpetrators. But there are both, and there's a lot of arena for study. And so we're so excited to have you here, to have some alumni of the nursing program here. And we really hope that this is just the beginning of a conversation on campus with the major medical professionals in the Staten Island and New York City area community. And please spread the word that this is a topic that's really important to integrate into medical professional identity formation.
Just want to say that we're going to purchase a second microphone before the next conference. I'm very tired and hungry now from my activity across the table. And to thank everyone again for being part of this. And we hope we'll see all of you in the fall when we resume our programming at the center. Thank you.
And for everybody who wants to come to lunch, with the speakers, the community members who've signed up for lunch, just come see me to check in, and we'll walk over together. Especially people who need special modes of transportation, like golf carts, come and speak to me. But thank you so much. Thank you to our Zoom audience. Thank you to our speakers. See you soon.
In the recording.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, how do I, sorry.
No, sure people, I want at least I got a picture. Oh, great.
Let's do it.
Get in the picture with the straw. Come on, into the picture with the straw. Do it.
Oh, I'm supposed to be in this picture. 1 second. Okay, yes, I do. Yeah. Okay. Okay, take this, take this. Okay, can I get in? Oh, sit down.
All right.
Thank you for being here. Oh, send it? I need my phone.
Just